this way. There we go.
This better? Are we live right now?
Are we live?
Oh my God, this is so cool.
This is cool.
Hey, I'm Benjamin Rolnick, and I'm here with the one and only Mark Shapiro. Oh my God, and I'm holding a selfie stick. I don't know if you can see it.
And
No.
I'm wearing a t-shirt that says my name on it. The wolf.
What does that shirt represent to you?
I got it at the Minnesota State Fair as a gift probably 10 years ago. And the wolf is pretty significant for me. First and foremost, I'm from Minnesota. We have a lot of Timberwolves, and I'm actually a huge Minnesota Timberwolves basketball fan. But the wolf also symbolizes intuition. And that's something that I've continued to want to press into, to hone my intuition and my ability to identify with it. So that's what this shirt symbolizes.
Interesting. Have you ever experienced yourself as a lone wolf in the world?
Yes.
What is that?
Yeah, who hasn't?
Well, that's a good question, because I actually do think that there are people who haven't. I think some people literally define themselves as lone wolves, meaning...
I would agree.
Yeah, they want to stand out, especially intellectuals.
I mean, I think there are different extremes of it, where on one end there's the lone wolf, kind of the man who has to do everything on his own, doesn't ask for support, is pretty closed off, doesn't open up or share how he feels. So you got that on kind of one end of the spectrum, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the person that's just so needy to be around others all the time that they don't stand on their own perhaps enough.
Wow, what a beautiful distinction. And I think that, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Mark runs an amazing podcast called...
The One and Only Podcast, and I just had this handsome devil on the show in an episode that's going to be coming out Tuesday. And holy moly, like, Ben really got real, really opened up. You shared some things that no one else has shared on the podcast so far. Extremely vulnerable.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, worth watching, guys. Worth watching. Or don't watch it. Don't see all the vulnerable stuff. I'd love to talk to you about getting real and authenticity, because that's what you're all about. So
I do my best.
Yeah. Is there ever a place where you can actually be 100% fully real and authentic? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, sure.
What does that look like?
Sure. What that looks like to me is letting my guard down and speak my truth, checking in with myself about what's true for me versus what I feel like I'm supposed to say. So be who I'm supposed to be.
What's really interesting is that when you say that, what I think to myself immediately of is when the self-help movement kind of blew up around the 70s, around Werner Erhard and S, the word integrity had such variegated meanings. Meaning, in one sense, it was my integrity in life, what is true for me. But in another sense, people would look at each other and say, oh, you're eating meat? That's so out of integrity. Or, oh my God, like, you want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro? That is so out of integrity. Yeah. And what I almost heard you say is that authenticity to you is self-defined.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we could easily say right off anything we do as being authentic. Oh, well, that's what felt authentic for me in the moment. So we can choose our fear and say, oh, that was authentic for me, choosing my fear over choosing my vision. So we can use it as an excuse, or you can really get dialed down into what the root is as to what your truth really is.
Wow. Now I can ask you some powerful questions.
Please.
Now the tables have been turned. That just inspired me. We'll do like a 10 with Ben. So click that bottom button on my
which one?
Right on the face. On the face. Right on the face. Boom. Wow. Now that my 10-minute timer is coming into use right now.
Holy moly.
Okay, so 10 with Ben. So when was a time in your life that you've really owned your power of authenticity? What's been one of those authentic breakthrough moments for you where you were in it, experiencing it, and it was, you had your Superman cape just dangling off your back, blowing in the wind?
Yeah, there's two different instances that I'll use as an example, and I was super present in both. So I'd say that was the main focus, is I wasn't in my head, but I was being present and in service. The first was when I did a Facebook Live last summer, where I had 20 people who I'm closest with submit questions to one of my friends. The most vulnerable questions that I could ask myself. Like specifically with me in mind, what would be the most challenging questions for me to answer live on Facebook.
Wow.
And I didn't give myself any time to prep for them. I literally went live. I opened up my email and went one by one through all the questions and just answered them openly and honestly on Facebook. And it was the most vulnerable I'd ever been publicly to date.
Wow.
And
Okay.
shared things that I'd never shared before, and it was
You don't
really
need
huge
to
for me.
answer them, but what were some of the questions, for example?
There was questions about sexuality. There were questions about risks that I've taken, choices that I've made, who I want to be.
Wow, who you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah, I mean,
Do you know yet?
there were all sorts of stuff. So that was one, and then I'd say another instance where I felt really authentic is when I facilitated my authenticity workshops, where I could have made it about me and being nervous about creating value for others, or simply being in service and creating the space.
Wow.
So I find that when I'm in service, I'm present. When I'm making it about me, I'm in my head, I'm in doubt, and it's a lot more challenging than to be authentic.
What do you think one of the greatest barriers people experience to being authentic is?
Yeah. Oh, I just in my 100th episode of my podcast,
100
I talked
episodes.
about this
Amazing.
exact question.
Really cool.
Yeah, because authenticity is the biggest buzzword out there. Like we heard it all the time in the elections. I'll be out and about and I'll hear someone use the word authentic or authenticity 5 times in the course of 5 minutes. So authenticity is an idea, but it's also a practice.
Yes.
And a lot of people think that, oh, I'm either authentic or I'm not authentic.
By the way, I keep playing with this thing,
it's
thinking
kinda
like,
fun,
where does it go?
I don't know.
It's just gonna keep changing.
So-
This seems like a good
Yeah,
position
so
right now.
what I've learned in my practice in interviewing people and talking to pretty much every person that I come across is that it's not a black and white thing. You're not either always authentic or like really struggle with it. It's usually like black and white, and it's a huge rabbit hole. So you can be authentic in terms of like the life that you're living. Are you living your dream? Or it could be in regards to your communication. Are you speaking your truth? And then even within the lens of communication, how many different people in our lives are we interacting with? So are you communicating authentically with the people that you work with? Are you communicating authentically with someone you're in a relationship with? Like
Yes.
all of the things that, lingering feelings you have about a person perhaps who you're in a relationship with, or maybe with your mom or dad or siblings, are you speaking your truth with them? Are you being real and authentic with the way you spend your time? Are you spending your time on the things that are actually truly most important to you? Or are you spending your time people pleasing? You're doing something not. So it's really an endless rabbit hole. So I always invite people to take a look and take inventory, check in across all areas of their life
I love that.
to see where they are being authentic and perhaps an area, an opportunity for growth or realignment.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the initial context. In terms of why people aren't authentic, there's 4 main reasons which I've come to the conclusion of. The first is societal programming, and we could talk about that till we're blue in the face, but from the moment we're brought into this world, our parents are teaching us values, how to live. We got our siblings, we go to school, there's peer pressure, there's fitting in, there's the media. You can't escape it, all the noise.
Yes,
It's everywhere. So that's the first reason. It's the first reason. The second reason is that we flat out lie to ourselves. And that's something that we talked about a lot on the podcast today, is that we just make up all these subjective stories and we subscribe to them. And many of them we cannot actually prove as fact. And we can actually have many different subjective viewpoints to anything, any situation, any objective thing that happens in our lives.
Give us an example.
Yeah, so an example of how we lie to ourselves. So, for example, telling yourself that you've had a bad day and that tub of ice cream is going to make you feel better.
Oh, cool.
Right? You get that hit of dopamine, and then it kind of dies off, and then you've eaten this whole tub of ice cream, and then maybe you eat some French fries, and you feel even worse than you did before.
And you add some olives to it,
to
and
pretend
some apple
like
cider vinegar.
Yeah, to pretend like you didn't know that was going to happen is just a flat out lie.
Interesting.
And there's just so many lies that we tell to ourselves all the time. How about when you make a commitment, speaking of integrity, that you're going to do something in a given week, and then you make up an excuse as to why you didn't do it, right? That's a lie, especially if you're making up excuses and renegotiating with yourself constantly.
But
so
it's
that's just
not a lie. I really should sleep another 2 hours.
Right.
Dot, 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 dot.
And I'm not saying that it's a black and white thing where you're either a liar or you're authentic. Like I think there's a lot of room in the middle there, but it's all about balance and being aware of when the story you're telling yourself, like realizing how subjective it is and how many different stations and different stories you could tune in and subscribe to. So that's the second reason.
Yeah, I love that
we lie to
word
ourselves.
again, the stations.
I do
to
too.
tune into.
And then the third reason why so many people struggle with authenticity is we're flat out scared. Right? The consequence of perhaps pissing somebody off or not being liked or not being outcast. Oftentimes we're being way more dramatic about the situation at hand.
Yes.
But that's the third. And then the fourth, this is the big one. The reason why it's so challenging to be authentic is we simply don't know how.
Oh, yeah, we had so much fun talking about that earlier. So we did this podcast, and we basically talked for about 2 hours, and then did a 2-hour-long podcast, and now we've been hanging out for another 2 hours talking about other things. There's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about.
And now we're doing Facebook Live. I love it. So, okay, go back into how.
Yeah.
I love that one. That was my favorite
don't know
one.
how. Well, it's not taught in schools. We're actually taught the benefits of not being authentic.
Yes.
As a kid.
Yes.
You know, from our parents, and sometimes we can get what we want by not being authentic.
Ooh, say more about that one.
So,
I love that.
Yeah, so I actually got this from Brian Reeves, who's an amazing writer, in his book.
What's up, Brian?
And yeah, as kids, as babies, we learn to manipulate people around us in order to get what we want. So you could be a kid and pretend like you're sad just to get your parents' love and attention, even if you really aren't sad in that moment.
Oh, man.
So we learn that kind of behavior as a kid, and then reinforce and replicate that. But we're also like I think vulnerability is a big word as well these days, and that it's not viewed as a weakness anymore. It's more and more people are talking about it as a strength. And it's one thing to realize that; it's another thing to practice that. Right? It's a muscle. Like it starts with being vulnerable and speaking your truth, maybe saying something that's really uncomfortable or you haven't said before. And it might be really hard the first time you do it, but the more you press into it, the easier it gets. So
yeah. And press into it consistently, too. That's one thing that I've learned, is that I can have a vulnerable moment where I completely break through my shell and my comfort zone, but unless I stay out by taking consistent, massive action, or at least little actions to maintain it, I go right back into my shell. So I was talking to this artist the other day, and she mentioned to me how she had these great breakthrough moments of finally going out to perform, and there were these watershed moments for her, but then what ended up happening was that she didn't consistently keep it up. So the idea of performing again for her becomes this massive hurdle to jump over in her head, as opposed to if she just said, I'm going to do an open mic every single night. And then now the next stage becomes something a bit more challenging, but she's already grown the muscle to sustain it.
Yeah, you get sharper and sharper.
I love that. What's really interesting is that as you said those things, what was the first societal conditioning? Is that what you programming?
Societal conditioning, programming.
So I actually saw them as layers where you peel away the layers, you get to the center of the Tootsie Roll. So I don't know how you normally teach that. But
I like that. I'm going to use it.
I literally saw
Maybe I use blow pops. Though.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because you start with societal conditioning. That's the victim conversation.
Yes. Yep.
And then what you realize that you've been lying to yourself the whole time.
Yep.
And then what you realize is that you're afraid to take new action. And then what you realize is that, I'm not actually afraid. I just don't know how to do it.
Yep.
And to me, that's why the how to do it has always been the primary thing. Because how to doesn't work. Meaning, we all know how to be beautiful, how to be in good relationships, how to be fearless, courageous, all of that. It doesn't work because people need to take the action. But part of it is that they don't know what actions to take in so many ways.
Understood. Is that 10
minutes?
minutes?
That was 10 minutes.
That was 10 minutes? It went by so fast.
Yeah, so you asked me why I keep the timer. And isn't that amazing how fast 10 minutes can go by?
Yeah, really fast. That was fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I did.
I definitely enjoyed this. Thank you for those 4 tips. I think that they're so utterly profound. You literally had a cascade of... I believe that was true. I believe everything that you said right there. That's something that is so integral to how I even think about personal transformation as a cascading flow. So thank you for articulating that. It's so beautiful. And I hope you all got a lot of value from this. Go check out Mark's Winning Weeks. Tell people a bit about Winning Weeks.
Sure, yeah. So I have a mastermind program for high achievers, really for people whose lives are already working but want to take them to the next level, maybe create a little bit better of a work-life balance or to have deeper, more authentic relationships. And it's a really cool program. We've got 34 people in it right now. It's 8 weeks. And my favorite part about the program is just there's so many people up to big things, supporting each other, like really in unprecedented ways. Like it's all about supporting each other. And then we kind of tap into the communal positivity. So 1 week there'll be someone kicking ass in their life professionally, and that like inspires other people in the community to kick ass professionally. Or there's someone who has a really powerful conversation, maybe improves their relationship with their spouse or with their parents, and then that inspires people to get real with people in their lives as well. So
yes.
It's a really cool program.
I'm inspired. All right, I'm signing up. Let's do it. How do people find you?
So areyoubeingrreal.com is my website. It's also a great question to ask about anything.
Great question.
So
easy to remember.
Yeah, that question just kind of came to me on the dance floor at Harvell's about a year and a half ago. And it's a great question. It can be asked about anything. I'm constantly asking myself that question. Definitely something that I have not been real about in my life lately is eating. I've just been eating like crap. I forgot to eat dinner last night. And so I could definitely be more real about how I take care of my body, the food that I put into my body. I feel some stress in my neck right now. So I can be more real about how I take care of my health.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Any final words before we sign up?
Have fun. I hope you're having a beautiful day. And, just to check in. There's so much noise out there everywhere. So to silence the noise, get in touch, take inventory across all areas of your life, your career, your finances, your professional relationships, familial relationships, social relationships, contribution, time management. There's a lot of things, but the more that we're in touch with all of them and what our truth is, I think the more likely we're going to live an aligned and authentic life, which is going to be ultimately what's most fulfilling.
I'm so happy to hang out with you. I'm so happy to know you. Yeah. So much love, many blessings. Have a beautiful day. Go check out Mark's stuff. He's the man. And bye.
Much love.